Welcome to Paranormal Files. I'm your host, Zoe Parker, and in today's episode, we journey into the shadows of the night, where ancient entities slip between waking and dreaming, and desire becomes terror. Throughout history, countless men and women have reported being visited by something not entirely human, creatures that seduce, suffocate, and consume. Are these just hallucinations in the dark, or are they real beings? Sexual predators from beyond the veil. The legends of Incubi and Succubi date back thousands of years, woven through the mythology and religious fears of cultures across the globe. The names themselves come from Latin, incubus meaning to lie upon, and succubus meaning to lie beneath. These entities were said to come to humans in the night, invading their dreams and violating their bodies, often leaving them drained, disturbed, and sometimes permanently altered. The earliest known references appear in Mesopotamian lore. In the epic tales of ancient Sumer, the demon Lilitu, a night spirit who preyed on men, may have been the first succubus. Over time, she evolved into Lilith, the dark and defiant first wife of Adam in later Hebrew mysticism, who fled Eden and became a nocturnal seductress of mortal men. In medieval Europe, tales of Incubi and Succubi exploded during the rise of Christianity. Church officials used these stories to warn against sin, lust, and forbidden dreams. The monk and scholar Thomas Aquinas even debated whether demons could collect human seed, store it, and use it to impregnate other victims. Many believed that a succubus would seduce a man to extract his essence, then transform into an incubus to deliver it to a woman, creating unnatural offspring known as cambions. This belief merged with growing paranoia about witches, and countless women were accused of sleeping with devils in human form. Inquisitors and demonologists documented the supposed physical symptoms of these encounters: bruises on the thighs, exhaustion, even mysterious pregnancies. In Islamic folklore, beings known as jinn or shayatin were said to possess similar qualities. While not always malevolent, some jinn were believed to visit humans in dreams or in moments of spiritual weakness, whispering temptations or initiating sexual contact. In the Zohar, a key text in Jewish mysticism, there are warnings of demonic spirits that prey on both men and women while they sleep, feeding on lust and spiritual vulnerability. Throughout history, these entities were more than just cautionary tales. They were explanations for real experiences, things people felt in the dark, alone, paralyzed by fear. Long before sleep science or psychology, these nighttime assaults were attributed not to the mind, but to monsters. And the more people talked about them, the more the line blurred between myth and reality. One of the earliest known documented encounters with a supposed succubus comes from the 13th century in the account of a French monk named Gervas of Tilbury. He wrote of a knight who, while traveling alone through a forest in Normandy, was seduced by a woman of otherworldly beauty who appeared by firelight in the dead of night. The woman vanished before dawn, but the knight claimed to have suffered strange dreams, weakness, and a sense of spiritual corruption in the weeks that followed. His tale was recorded not as fantasy, but as testimony of a real demonic encounter, one meant to be taken seriously by the faithful. Over the centuries, such stories multiplied. In 17th century Spain, a nun named Sister Maria de Agreda confessed in her writings that she was visited by a dark male figure while she slept. He came silently, bringing with him an intense cold, a sense of pressure, and a feeling of being watched even after waking. Though she believed she had resisted his temptations, her journal reflects deep spiritual torment, and her descriptions match modern accounts of sleep paralysis and incubus attacks almost perfectly. She described waking to find her body paralyzed, her breath heavy, and an invisible presence pressing down on her chest. In the United States, a chilling case emerged in the late 1800s from a small town in Massachusetts. A young woman named Anna, who worked as a maid in a wealthy household, reported nightly visits from what she described as a tall, shadowy man with red eyes and a voice that vibrated through her bones. Her employers initially dismissed her claims as madness or hysteria. But after Anna began to suffer spontaneous bruising and fatigue, they brought in a local priest who claimed the girl was under demonic attack. His attempts at cleansing the home were unsuccessful. Anna disappeared soon after, and her case was buried in local lore, resurfacing only through handwritten letters discovered decades later in the attic of that same house. In more recent times, stories have taken on a strangely consistent pattern. Individuals from vastly different cultures and backgrounds report eerily similar encounters, being awoken at night by a sensation of paralysis, a weight on their chest, and a seductive presence that speaks without words. Often, these visitations include intense sexual hallucinations or physical sensations that feel deeply real. Victims awaken disoriented, physically exhausted, and in some cases, traumatized. These first-person accounts stretch from medieval convents to modern city apartments, from scholars to soldiers, from the deeply religious to hardened skeptics. Regardless of belief, the fear is universal, and the details are often too similar to ignore. In the 20th century, as interest in paranormal research grew alongside the rise of spiritualism and psychology, documented investigations into Incubus and Succubus phenomena became more structured. One of the most famous cases emerged in 1974 in Culver City, California, involving a woman named Doris Bither. Her story would later inspire the film The Entity. Doris claimed that she was repeatedly assaulted by an invisible force in her home, often while she was in bed. The attacks were violent, and she described being thrown across the room, physically restrained, and sexually violated by unseen entities, sometimes more than one. Two paranormal investigators, Barry Taff and Carrie Gaynor, took her claims seriously. They documented an array of strange phenomena inside the home, including cold spots, disembodied voices, and orbs of light that appeared in Polaroid photographs. The most disturbing were accounts of spectral figures materializing partially in front of witnesses. One investigator described seeing a vague, human-shaped distortion in the air above Doris as she screamed during an attack. Despite repeated attempts at cleansing and psychological evaluation, the activity reportedly persisted for years. In 1986, a small research group in Quebec began collecting reports of nocturnal assault experiences from across North America. Their study found that a surprising number of people, many of whom had no prior history of mental illness or paranormal interest, described nearly identical encounters. Victims reported waking at night, unable to move, feeling a presence beside or on top of them. Some claimed to see shadowy figures. Others felt hands or pressure, often accompanied by sensations of forced intimacy or psychological intrusion. Several described whispering voices speaking in unknown languages, while others said the entities communicated telepathically. In more recent years, advancements in digital technology have allowed some alleged victims to attempt recording their experiences. One woman in Manchester, England, set up a night vision camera after a string of disturbing dreams left her drained and frightened. On review, the footage showed strange flickers of movement in her bedroom and a brief, cold mist forming above her bed before vanishing. While the video was inconclusive, it gained traction online and attracted thousands of comments from viewers claiming to have had similar experiences. Despite skepticism, a growing number of paranormal researchers argue that the consistency of these reports cannot be easily dismissed. The International Institute for Paranormal Psychology published a white paper in 2014 summarizing over 1,000 self-reported cases of nocturnal entity encounters, many of which involved overt sexual themes. The report concluded that while not all cases were necessarily paranormal, a significant percentage defied conventional explanation, and the victims, regardless of background or belief, described trauma as real as any physical assault. When it comes to explaining these disturbing experiences, two dominant frameworks emerge: the paranormal and the scientific. From a paranormal perspective, Incubi and Succubi are believed to be non-human entities that feed on human energy through intimate contact. Some traditions describe them as lower-level demons, others as spirits trapped between worlds. In ceremonial magic and certain branches of demonology, Incubi and Succubi are listed among named spirits, some even associated with ancient deities that were demonized over time. These entities are said to be drawn to emotional intensity, unresolved trauma, or latent psychic energy. They appear during sleep, when the boundary between the conscious and the spiritual is thinnest. One belief suggests that these beings do not originate in the physical world, but rather from the astral plane. In occult teachings, the astral plane is a layer of reality where thoughts, emotions, and spirits intermingle. Practitioners of astral projection sometimes report encountering seductive, manipulative presences that seem to pull energy from them. These reports are often strikingly similar to traditional incubus or succubus encounters. In such interpretations, the bedroom is merely the setting. The real interaction takes place beyond the body, in a dimension most cannot see. Some modern energy workers and psychic healers claim that sexual entities can attach themselves to a person's aura or energetic field. These attachments may be formed during times of emotional vulnerability, trauma, or through participation in occult practices without proper protection. Once attached, they may drain energy over time, manifesting as fatigue, mood disturbances, and recurring sexual dreams. These spiritual parasites, as some call them, can allegedly be removed through ritual cleansing, energy healing, or even guided exorcism. On the scientific side, neurologists and psychologists often point to sleep paralysis as the likely explanation. During rapid eye movement sleep, the brain paralyzes the body to prevent movement during dreams. Occasionally, a person may regain awareness before full motor control returns. In this liminal state, the mind may still be dreaming while the body remains frozen. Sensations of pressure, hallucinations, and intense fear are common. The feeling of a presence in the room, often malevolent, has been documented across cultures and centuries. Some researchers attribute sexual elements of these experiences to a combination of hypnagogic hallucinations and cultural conditioning. In societies with heavy religious or moral codes, especially surrounding sexuality, unconscious guilt or repression may manifest in the form of a punishing or seductive presence. But this explanation does not account for the sheer consistency of the details, even in people who claim no religious background or sexual shame. The truth may lie somewhere in between. As both camps try to explain what happens in those silent hours between dreams and waking, the phenomenon persists, and whether it is psychological, spiritual, or something else entirely, the result is the same, a haunting encounter that feels terrifyingly real. In the age of smartphones and digital surveillance, the stories have not stopped. They have multiplied. The internet has become a new hunting ground, not just for those seeking help, but for the phenomenon itself to evolve. Online forums are filled with anonymous testimonies from people who claim they are being stalked, visited, or even possessed by entities that match the descriptions of Incubi and Succubi. Unlike traditional ghost stories, these encounters are intensely personal, often erotic, and deeply disturbing. And with every account, a pattern emerges that suggests the phenomenon has adapted to modern life while retaining its ancient shape. A user on a well-known paranormal subreddit wrote about waking every night at exactly 3:13 in the morning. Each time, he was paralyzed, heart racing, and felt something breathing against his neck. Eventually, he saw a figure crouched in the corner, female, with long black hair and glowing eyes. She would not speak, but he described a seductive energy so powerful it blurred his ability to resist. After weeks of these episodes, he claimed to have lost weight, become emotionally unstable, and suffered terrifying lucid dreams. His post ended with a plea for help, and over 400 replies from users with near-identical stories. In Tokyo, a woman known only as Aya posted a video diary to a now-deleted channel. In it, she detailed a 2-month span in which she was visited every other night by a masculine force that immobilized her, whispered in her ear in a language she could not identify, and left her waking in sweat and tears. Her voice was calm but shaken. In one video, she claimed the entity had followed her to work. She felt his presence in elevators, caught glimpses in glass reflections, and smelled burnt ozone wherever she went. Not long after posting a video where she attempted a self-performed banishment ritual, the channel vanished. Viewers who had followed her journey still debate whether it was staged, censored, or something far stranger. TikTok and YouTube Shorts now feature young people sharing experiences labeled as succubus dreams or incubus attacks. The hashtag paralysis demon has amassed millions of views, turning what was once private terror into viral content. Some of these videos are jokes. Others are performances. But many have the same quiet tone of real fear, of something inexplicable that refuses to be dismissed. In this digital confessional culture, more people feel safe sharing what once would have been kept secret. And the more they share, the more the phenomenon seems to spread. Paranormal investigators have taken note. In 2021, a team based in Chicago launched a multi-city study to track reports of sexual entity encounters using data from digital platforms. They found that the phenomenon spiked during periods of global stress, particularly in 2020 during pandemic lockdowns. People isolated in their homes, disconnected from routine, reported more frequent and intense encounters. Whether this was a psychological effect or something else, the entities were not silent. If anything, they were more active than ever. The psychological and cultural impact of incubus and succubus encounters runs far deeper than isolated fear. These experiences, whether real or imagined, leave scars that often shape a person's identity, relationships, and worldview. Many victims do not just report a single event, but a recurring pattern. A lifelong sense of being watched, manipulated, or spiritually violated. Therapists and trauma specialists have noted that those who report these experiences often describe symptoms that mirror post-traumatic stress disorder. Nightmares, anxiety, sexual dysfunction, and dissociation are all common. Yet the cause of the trauma is something science cannot fully explain, and society often refuses to acknowledge. For some, the impact turns spiritual. Survivors of long-term entity contact often become deeply religious, even if they were not before. Some turn to exorcism or ritual purification. Others pursue energy healing, protection spells, or even witchcraft, not to summon spirits, but to defend against them. The experiences drive a search for meaning, for power, for any way to regain control. In interviews, many victims express a profound loneliness. They fear being labeled delusional. They fear being mocked. But most of all, they fear the next visit, because once it starts, it rarely stops on its own. Popular culture has both amplified and distorted the image of these entities. Films, television, and literature often romanticize the succubus as an exotic temptress or reduce the incubus to a metaphor for repressed desire. But for those who have lived the experience, there is no allure. There is only violation. The seductive quality of these beings is not one of pleasure, but of compulsion, a psychic grip that overrides willpower and shatters boundaries. In these stories, consent is an illusion. Victims often describe the sensations as confusing, repulsive, and euphoric all at once. It is this paradox that makes the trauma so difficult to process. The body reacts, but the soul recoils. Communities that have carried these legends for centuries often see these encounters as warnings. In rural parts of South America, stories of El Sombrerón, a dark figure who seduces women at night, are still told to this day. In the Philippines, tales of the Badibat, a tree spirit that sits on a sleeper's chest and feeds off their breath, are passed down through generations. In Iceland, dreams involving hidden people or huldufólk are treated seriously, often with rituals to protect the dreamer. In every corner of the world, different names are given, but the shape of the story remains eerily familiar. The fear is not always rooted in what is seen, but in what cannot be stopped. These experiences break trust in the body, in the mind, and in the safety of one's own bed. That disruption bleeds into waking life. Victims become hyper-aware, paranoid, spiritually frantic. Some isolate themselves, avoiding sleep altogether. Others, feeling marked or chosen, become obsessed, not with the entity, but with the question, why me? And what does it want that it keeps coming back? Across cultures and centuries, the core elements of these encounters remain disturbingly consistent. Whether described as demons, spirits, astral entities, or psychic parasites, the themes of unwanted intimacy, nocturnal intrusion, and lingering dread form the backbone of nearly every case. Victims speak of being awakened by a weight on the chest, the feeling of being observed by something just out of sight, and the overwhelming sensation of vulnerability, not just physical, but spiritual. These experiences almost always occur during moments of transition, moving to a new home, the loss of a loved one, a period of emotional or sexual crisis. It is in these fragile windows that the phenomenon seems to strike. Physical traces are often reported. Scratch marks on the skin, bruises in places the victim could not have reached during sleep, the smell of sulfur or rotting flowers in a closed room. Electronic disturbances are also common. Flickering lights, phones losing battery overnight, devices turning on by themselves. In some cases, pets behave erratically, barking at empty corners or refusing to enter the bedroom. These clues may not prove anything in a scientific sense, but they add to the growing archive of patterns that make this phenomenon difficult to ignore. One striking commonality is how victims describe the voice of the entity. It is rarely spoken aloud. Most describe it as a kind of internal sound, a voice inside the mind that is not their own. It speaks in fragments, suggestions, or sometimes only in emotion. It evokes lust, shame, fear, or confusion. In a few cases, the voice has issued warnings, not threats, but knowledge of things the victim could not otherwise have known. One man in Romania claimed his incubus warned him of his brother's death before it happened. Others report being told secrets about people in their lives that later turned out to be true. This has led some to speculate that these entities possess a form of omniscience, or that they tap into a field of consciousness beyond what science currently understands. The locations of the attacks also vary, but certain settings appear more often than others. Rural homes, old buildings, and places with histories of trauma or abandonment seem to attract more reports. But even in urban environments where noise and distractions abound, these encounters still occur. Hotels, in particular, are cited frequently, temporary spaces with constant turnover, filled with the emotional residue of previous occupants. Some researchers believe these liminal spaces act as conduits, allowing entities easier access. Religious symbols and practices often have unpredictable effects. Some victims say prayer, holy water, or sacred texts drive the presence away. Others report the exact opposite, that attempts to resist only intensify the experience. A handful claim that when they stopped resisting and accepted the presence, it grew weaker and eventually disappeared. Whether this is spiritual victory or psychological coping is still debated, but it adds another layer of complexity to an already confounding mystery. Taken together, these recurring details, the voices, the bruises, the smells, the patterns of location and timing, create a chilling profile, not just of a supernatural visitor, but of an intelligence that adapts, selects, and returns, one that knows how to make itself unforgettable. If these entities are real, what are they? And what do they want? Are they truly demons in the traditional sense, operating under some spiritual law we do not yet understand? Or are they something older, something that predates our religions and myths? Some occultists believe Incubi and Succubi are not individual beings, but manifestations of a larger force, a collective hunger that takes shape depending on the fears and desires of the human mind. They argue that these entities are drawn to psychic tension, feeding not on lust alone, but on energy released through powerful emotion. In this theory, terror, shame, longing, and pain are not just side effects, they are the feast. There is also the idea that Incubi and Succubi are not external beings at all, but projections, real in their impact, but born from the subconscious mind. If a person carries unresolved trauma, deep repression, or overwhelming guilt, that psychic weight could attract or even generate a presence. It would not matter whether that presence came from within or without. The experience would be real. The body would suffer. The fear would linger. Some spiritual traditions suggest that what we perceive as demons are reflections of our own wounds. But this explanation still leaves too many unanswered questions, especially when multiple people in the same space experience the same thing. Others take a more metaphysical view. They suggest that these entities come from a different dimension. Not hell, but another layer of reality that occasionally overlaps with ours. In this framework, Incubi and Succubi are interdimensional predators. They pass through cracks in consciousness when we sleep, when our minds are most open, and feed on the essence of life itself. This would explain why victims often feel not just violated, but drained, as though something was taken that cannot be returned. A few fringe researchers have even proposed extraterrestrial origins. They speculate that alien intelligence could use dreamlike contact as a form of psychic harvesting or behavioral experimentation. These beings might not be demonic, but technological, capable of creating projections tailored to each individual. In this scenario, the seduction is part of the test. The resulting terror is data. And the reason the experience feels so intensely real is because it is, just not in a way our current understanding of reality can process. Then there are the ancient texts, Sumerian tablets, Egyptian carvings, Vedic scriptures, which speak of beings that visited humans in their sleep to teach, tempt, or terrorize. In some stories, they fathered powerful offspring. In others, they cursed bloodlines for generations. The consistency of these accounts, across continents and millennia, raises a disturbing possibility that humanity has never truly been alone in the night, that there is a shadow presence woven into our history, hidden just behind the veil of sleep. If these entities exist in any form, spiritual, psychological, or dimensional, their purpose may never be fully understood. But one thing becomes clear the deeper we explore. The stories are not going away. They are growing, adapting, spreading. Whether through whispered folklore or viral TikToks, the Incubus and Succubus remain with us, shape-shifting watchers in the dark, always waiting for the next open door. In the end, the mystery of Incubi and Succubi lies not just in their existence, but in their persistence. For thousands of years, they have haunted the minds of mystics, priests, skeptics, and scholars. They appear in sacred texts, medieval journals, court testimonies, modern clinical reports, and late-night forum posts. Whether described as demons, spirits, shadows, or dreams, their signature remains the same. Intimate violation in the vulnerable hours of sleep, followed by exhaustion, confusion, and fear that lingers long after waking. What makes them so terrifying is not only what they do, but what they imply. If these beings are real in any sense, then there is no true refuge in the privacy of your own mind, no safety in the comfort of your own bed. It suggests that something ancient and unseen still walks among us, indifferent to belief, undeterred by disbelief. Something that watches in silence, waiting for the right moment when consciousness thins and the body forgets how to fight. These stories also reveal something deeply human, a fragile line between waking and dreaming, desire and dread, memory and myth. We are creatures caught between the physical and the spiritual, between science and superstition, and it is in that in-between space that these entities thrive. They prey not only on the body, but on the soul's uncertainty, on everything we cannot explain, but feel deep in the marrow of our being. What if they are not isolated visitations, but symptoms of a larger truth we have yet to comprehend? What if human vulnerability is not a flaw, but a doorway? If there are things on the other side of that door, the question is not whether they exist, but whether we have already let them in. Thanks for listening. This has been Paranormal Files. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, gain access to bonus content, and unlock our entire library of podcasts, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon, patreon.com/The Forbidden Knowledge Network. Subscribe now.